Hello everyone. Today we are looking at a high-level tool that helps us scan the entire horizon for risks, the PESTLE analysis. In formal terms, this is a strategic framework used to identify and analyze the key external macro-environmental factors that can influence a project's success. In plain English, it's like using a pair of powerful binoculars to look way outside your building. Many project managers make the mistake of only looking at their own team, but PESTLE reminds us that the big world out there, the government, the economy, even the weather, is filled with stakeholders who can change our plans in an instant. I once worked on a project where we ignored a tiny shift in local politics only to have our funding cut when a new mayor was elected. By using this tool, we identify the outside people before they become inside problems. So now that we have mastered the idea that the project exists in a much bigger world, you might be wondering what the P stands for and how it starts our scan. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is looking at political factors. This brings us to political factors. The technical books describe these as the extent to which a government intervenes in the economy or a specific industry, including tax policies, trade restrictions, and general political stability. To put it simply, this is about the powers that be. Stay with me here, because you've probably seen this at the office where a project gets delayed because of a change in leadership at the very top. These stakeholders aren't in your daily meetings, but their decisions on things like trade deals or government subsidies can make or break your budget. By scanning the political landscape, you identify stakeholders like government officials, lobbyists, or even local activists. Now, while politics sets the stage, the money is what keeps the show running, which leads us straight into the world of economic factors. Now we have to tackle economic factors. Formally, these are the external economic conditions such as inflation rates, interest rates, and exchange rates that affect a project's cost and profitability. In everyday speak, this is the pulse of the market. Imagine you are building a project that requires expensive imported steel and suddenly the currency exchange rate crashes. That is an economic risk. This immediately identifies stakeholders like your bank's loan officer, your procurement head, and even the finance directors of your suppliers. Let's break this down together. Every time the cost of living or the cost of borrowing changes, your project's risk profile shifts. But here is the catch. Even if the money is right, you have to make sure the people you are serving actually want what you are building. Which brings us right into our next step, analyzing social factors. This brings us to social and cultural factors. The book style definition refers to the demographic characteristics, norms, customs, and values of the population within which the project operates. To translate that into human speak, it's the vibe of the people. If you're building a product for a country where the culture values privacy above all else, and your software is very data hungry, you have a massive social risk. This identifies stakeholders like community leaders, user advocacy groups, and the general public. I remember a project where we launched a marketing campaign that was perfectly fine in one country but considered offensive in another because we didn't do a social scan. By understanding the people's habits, you avoid the risk of being rejected by the very community you need for success. Now, knowing the culture is great, but we also have to look at the tools that are changing the way those people live, which leads us to technological factors. Let's look at technological factors. Technically, these are the innovations in technology that may affect the operations of the project or the industry, including automation, R&D activity, and tech awareness. In simple terms, this is the speed of change. If a new technology comes out that makes your current project obsolete, you have a major risk. But this also brings in stakeholders like technical experts, innovation consultants, and even competitors who might be using that tech against you. You've probably seen this. Once a new app or tool hits the market, everyone's expectations shift. By analyzing these tech shifts, we find the disruptor stakeholders before they disrupt us. Now, while technology moves fast, the rule book often moves slow, and we need to make sure we are playing by it. Which brings us right into our final step, legal and environmental factors. Finally, we reach the legal and environmental factors, the L and E of our PESTLE. Formally, these involve the laws that affect the project environment and the ecological or geographic influences on project outcomes. In plain English, this is the law of the land and the power of nature. This identifies stakeholders like health and safety inspectors, lawyers, and environmental protection agencies. If a new carbon emission law is passed, those inspectors are now your most important stakeholders. It's been a long journey from scanning the government to looking at the climate. But this 360-degree view ensures that your stakeholder register is truly complete. You aren't just guessing who matters, you are using a systematic map to find every force that can touch your project. So now that we mastered how to use PESTLE to see the big picture, we are going to discuss TCOP analysis in details in next chapter.